Saturdays at 9 a.m. on Ocala's News Talk, The Source 96.3 FM and 1370 AM.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala!
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. All right, let's think about this for a second. You look at the candidates that are running for office, and before you think I'm only talking about the presidential candidates, I'm not. I'm talking about every single candidate for every single office you've ever heard of, whether it's the county commission, the city council, or the president of the United States. You look at the people, men or women, who are running for those offices, and you think, what is it like for them when they get that job, when they get voted in, right? What is it like? Well, what do they expect it to be like? Do they expect it to be, all right, I sit in my chair and I make legislation. I make some laws. This is what I think they think. I think they think their primary job is to make laws. And in my mind, if a law is going to put them in a position, put us as their constituents in a position to have a better life as a result of that law, then yes. But I think there's way too many laws. I think what we need mostly from our leaders is leadership. I've thought this forever. And you know I've said it, Robin, I've said it on the air, and I've never had a guest who actually looks at the whole leadership thing. I've actually studied leadership as a kid, because I was not the leader in the class. I was not the follower either. I was the kid who said, I don't need anybody and I don't want anybody to need me. I was that kid. But I did watch other kids who had like natural leadership abilities. Mm-hmm. And then as I got older, I realized that people seem to naturally need to have a leader. And so I decided to be my own leader. If anybody wanted to follow me, fine. Not that I have anything worth following. But leadership skills are an important thing to look at. If a leader has a conflict, that's when the real, what do they call it, test is made? That's where they put the test to the, what's the phrase, Robin, mustard or something? Edgar Papke has written a book called The Elephant in the Boardroom, How Leaders Use and Manage Conflict to Reach Greater Levels of Success. Edgar has a list of credentials. He is both a student and a teacher of leadership and the human art of business. He's a coach and consultant with leaders and their teams in a wide range of industries and institutions. He's an award-winning speaker, recognized by Visage as the Impact Speaker of the Year and the International Speaker of the Year. He's also a singer, it says here.
Yes, singer-songwriter.
Is that right?
3 albums, yeah.
You have to be a leader if you're in that business.
Exactly.
Yeah. Edgar Papke, good morning, Edgar. How are you?
Good morning. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for being on the air with us. Where are you right now?
Well, I'm in Colorado.
Colorado. Were you at the debates by chance?
No, I wasn't. Though I was in the vicinity. How could one not be? It was really interesting.
But you were, I'm sure, paying attention to it. Yeah. Do you know?
Very much so.
Okay, so let's start there. When you look at that lineup of men and one woman, what I see is nothing but leaders. However, some are more leader-like than others.
Yes, very true.
Yeah. Is there a way to learn leadership, and do you think conflict is a way to catapult that education? If you're elected into a position, let's say, gosh, I don't mean to bring up memories of 9/11, but on 9/11, you had two people who came to the forefront. You had President Bush, and you had the mayor of New York, Giuliani.
Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah. I mean, both right there, you had conflict like nobody had ever seen before, at least in our generation.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, and when you look at conflict in that light, then you'd say, well, that's an extreme form of conflict that we engage in. Yeah. You know, conflict behavior starts anything from being assertive, if there's a difference of opinion between you and I, and or if you're getting something I'm not, and I want something more, then I have a conflict in the relationship. it begins there and can elevate all the way up to violence and physical violence, and at that level.
But if we have a conflict, let's say you and I, let's say we're talking about something and we disagree. I take the approach that if I listen to you carefully and I respect your intelligence, then I'm going to pay attention to what you're saying and reconsider my position and possibly back down. Does that make me less of a leader?
No, it doesn't. As a matter of fact, it makes you more of a leader. When we take a look at leaders and the traits of leadership, and this goes right into the election and every election, as you mentioned before, 3 things people expect of great leaders. The first one is to create change in our world and make the world better. That's why the majority of people follow the minority of leaders. The second one is that we do expect them to constructively confront conflict and deal with conflict in good ways and get great. Right? And the third one is to know themselves. Self-knowledge is something that's become so important. It's important in all of our lives, in particular for leaders who really need to be aware of their emotions and their behaviors. And so one of the keys here is to be able to listen. It's easy to be combative. It is. And and part of being combative is typically either listening to the other person so that you can try and get the one up on them, or to ignore what they're saying and not give them any respect, and not listen at all to the ideas or the thoughts of another person. Yeah. So when you think about what is great leadership and why it can be taught, is because the central theme of great leadership and of dealing with conflict effectively is listening. It's listening to other points of view and understanding them, and then working towards finding resolve around what's in the common interest of everyone involved.
And in my opinion, a great leader doesn't elevate him or herself above everybody else and talk down to people. They treat everybody with respect and as equals.
Very much so. When we listen to one another, we talk about mutual respect. I treat you the way you want to be treated. You treat me the way I want to be treated. You can't even go there or find a path to that until we listen to one another. So you're absolutely right. And there's a leveling effect as human beings that occurs, that we can connect to one another at a very meaningful level once we attain that mutual respect. And again, that I don't know how to treat you until I listen to you and understand who you are, and that becomes so powerful.
Yeah, and sometimes we really have to pay attention. We have to respect somebody else's intelligence. One of the things I think that illustrates that we as human beings are not completely evolved yet is our selection of leaders, especially when it comes to women, because I think we have the stereotype that the one who's going to be able to face the conflict the best is going to be the man. We had a situation in our community, and I'm not picking sides on this, this is a local issue, but the fire chief was recently replaced, and there's a lady right now saying that she was passed over because she's a lady. Clearly she had all the credentials, but maybe those who made the decision, this was not a public vote, this was an in-house decision, but still, perhaps somebody looked at the qualified man and the qualified lady with equal, you could say, qualifications, whatever the word is I'm looking for, and pick the man, because we have not yet, we don't yet see women as able to face conflict.
Yeah, the social model for women is that they're intended to be by nature, at least in our lens on our society. We take the position that women are intended to be more collaborative and understanding, and perhaps not as assertive as men are. And yet they're very capable. Both men and women are very capable of being assertive at equal levels. It's also a matter of how we go about doing it. I think you're right, and it says a lot about how it is that we navigate conflict in different parts of our lives. Because now we're talking about culture, and what culture does, it gives us certain rules of engagement that are really brought to the forefront when we're in conflict. And there's certain belief systems about roles that people play in those. And it happens in organizations where there's hierarchies. That happens in organizations around where there's beliefs about who has power and influence and why. And until we have an honest and open conversation and dialogue around that, it's difficult to make those shifts. As a matter of fact, you're in isolating that, you've done a really great job of just even isolating another conflict. that we're engaged in, which is the power and influence and levels of equality among people, including men and women.
But good leaders,
conversation.
But the good leaders don't look at conflict as an obstacle. They look at it as an asset.
Yeah, it's the opportunity it is. When you think about just human nature, innovation, creativity are all aspects of conflict, which is why it's so important for leaders to really embrace conflict as being very positive in light of the conflict, what it does, it raises issues and it raises differences and raises, more than anything else, possibilities and opportunities. It's a matter of how we go about using it and how effective we are in doing that.
In my opening, Edgar, I was talking about how people who are elected to office look at their job as to create legislation, and I expressed my opinion that I think sometimes their best role in our lives is to simply be leaders. So a great example of where leadership trumped, not to use Trump's name, but leadership trumped leadership trumped legislation was in the Don't Smoke campaigns, because there never was any legislation that said if you smoke you'll get a fine, or if you smoke you'll be under arrest. Instead, what happened was, and this was mostly young people, so the leader was this group of young people who said, you know what, let's make a campaign, and you know what, that campaign is working. And I think we could do the same thing as a country when it comes to racial issues. We could do the same thing when it comes to coming to some kind of an understanding of what our taxes should actually pay for, and that kind of thing. I don't know. I think legislation sometimes gets in the way of leadership.
Yeah, and one of the things that can happen in that is the legislation is used as a means of resolving a conflict. And unfortunately, when that happens, sometimes, quite often, what happens is the voice of the people that the legislation is intended to be of benefit the most, those are left out of the conversation, or they're not really listened to at a level where the legislation truly reflects what the intention is of the public, of the citizenry.
There have been
very accurate on your part. Yes, I agree with you.
There have been a few stories of CEOs or founders of businesses, I should say, who had to step back or resign. I think Steve Jobs was one of them, because it was recognized.
At one point, yes.
It was recognized that he, while being the brains behind it all, wasn't exactly the best leader.
Right. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, that happens frequently, and unfortunately, on the other hand, there's also leaders in organizations and CEOs, both in large and small businesses, that people will adhere to their power and influence, and while they can be pretty brilliant at certain aspects of business or what they do, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're influencing people very well, or that they're treating people with the mutual respect and treating them with a value, and that's intended to be there. So that's another good observation. Yes.
Government from a local level all the way up to the national level tends to be dysfunctional at times. How would you try to help them to work together for the betterment of the people and not for their egos?
Yeah, ego will always be there because we all want some level of self-satisfaction. So let's be honest about that. Everybody's got an ego. It's what we do with it and how well we know ourselves. I think the most important, what my coaching would be, is first and foremost, be clear on what your intention is in all of your relationships to everyone around you, near and far. And for politicians and government leaders, that includes people that they will never have a first-hand relationship with. It's their influence on all those relationships, which means that, secondly, they need to act with great intention, and I would always suggest to them to look at what their desired legacy is. You come into the world with nothing, you leave with nothing. What's left is how people perceive their relationships to you and who you are as a human being. So while you could be successful in winning certain battles and conflicts, that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll have the legacy that you want and what people will admire and respect.
Yeah.
And then the third is listen. Just learn to be a very astute listener, and not just to listen to get your own point of view verified or to get information that you can create a rebuttal with, or rather really listen to understand other people and what they're saying and what they're looking for. And I think those three would be the key points of coaching that I would give them.
That's good stuff. While ego is often looked upon as a bad personality trait, I actually think there's a positive thing to ego. If we elect somebody to an office and she's got a big ego, then there's a good chance that they're going to do that thing that leaves the best legacy. And public opinion is the best legacy. I mean, to have a positive public opinion. Hitler had the worst public opinion.
Yes.
And he's one among many, isn't he?
So there's a leader that made some really stupid mistakes, even though he was a leader. And why anybody ever followed him is beyond me. I was born after the fact, and I wouldn't have been in that country anyway. I don't think, but I just don't understand how people follow anybody who leads people into doing harm to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and conflict is a lot about fear, that I'm not going to get what I want or need. And so what we do is we build constructs on what people will follow and what they'll do based on the leveraging that fear. Keep in mind, all conflict is fear that I'm not going to get what I want or need. And if somebody provides a way of getting that, or can show me a future state through which I might get it, is regardless of how destructive or dysfunctional is, I may find myself following that. And it's a dangerous place to play.
That is a pretty profound thing to say. Edgar, can we ask you to hang on just for a moment? We have to take a weather break and a couple of commercials, and then we'll be back. Edgar Papke is our guest. He has written the book, The Elephant in the Boardroom. By the way, I looked you up a little bit, and you have been one of the TEDx speakers in, where was it, Puget Sound?
Puget Sound.
Yeah, I was invited up to Puget Sound to speak up there, yes. Mm-hmm.
We will take a little break. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. Today will be a delightful day with plenty of sunshine. The afternoon high 81 to 85. Then a clear night tonight with lows in the low to mid 60s, upper 60s along the coast. For tomorrow, partly sunny skies and warm. The high 82 to 86. For Sunday, sunshine, some clouds, and very warm, high 84 to 88. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Legally Yours, brought to you by Fuller & Fuller Attorneys at Law. On the air every Wednesday morning at 10:30 a.m. with John Fuller, a board-certified civil trial lawyer for over 25 years. John welcomes your questions, from business to complex family matters to legal disputes. So tune in every Wednesday morning at 10:30 a.m. for Legally Yours with John Fuller, right here on WOCA 1370 AM and 96.3 FM, The Source.
We're saving thousands with Robert Palmer.
So rule number one is always shop around. Always shop around. If you're trying to get a mortgage, if you're trying to get the best credit card, if you're looking at student loans, cell phone bills, you name it, rule number one is always shop around. Always shop around.
That's rule number one, just one more vital part of fighting back to stop being a financial zombie. Yes, you can take the mystery out of the complicated world of finances. Take charge when it comes to your money. Listen in on The Source, 96.3 FM and 1370 AM, Saturdays at 12:05.
Here's what you may have missed on the John Tesh Radio Show.
And it's bad thoughts about messing up or not being good enough that kill confidence. So tell yourself, you can do it. Blowing bubbles can help us fall asleep because it's like a deep breathing exercise helping to calm our body and mind. And since blowing bubbles feel silly, it helps the mind move on from worries that might keep us awake. So throw back some cranberry juice, improve your heart health within 24 hours.
Intelligence for your life on the John Tesh Radio Show. Don't miss this stuff.
All right, let's continue. This is a fascinating conversation. Edgar Papke is on the phone. We're talking about leadership. His book is called The Elephant in the Boardroom. That's a metaphor for a conflict that might be presented to a leader, let's say at a board meeting for a business. Edgar, real quick, I want to make an illustration using the living room instead of the boardroom, okay?
Sure.
Okay. So in my house, I am the alpha male. I am him. I am the guy.
Yes, you are.
I live alone, so it's easy. Okay.
That might be why.
Okay, but if I go to somebody else's house, and so
Right.
take away boardroom and say living room. So in my living room, I'm the leader. I'm the alpha male. So if I'm in the living room and I see the dog and the cat starting to, cause too much problems, and I know they're going to knock the lamp over or something like that, I take a positive stand. I'm a leader, and I say, knock it off. I'm a leader. I'm going to handle that conflict right then and there. Okay. Now I go to somebody else's house, and I'm not the alpha male in that house. I relinquish my leadership to the man or the lady who is the leader, the head of that house. Okay. If I'm sitting in that living room, and their dog and their cat is starting to become crazy, and the leader of that place, the leader of that living room, is not paying attention to the elephant in the room, which is, in this case, the dog and the cat getting ready to knock over a lamp, I have a choice. I can either let the lamp fall over, or I can get out of my role of stepping back and become the leader in somebody else's boardroom, more or less, and say, knock it off to the dog and the cat.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, is this possible? Can you transfer? Can Barack Obama go to Moscow and be a leader in somebody else's boardroom, in Putin's boardroom, so to speak?
Yeah, and that would sound right along the lines of, if it's your living room, Larry, what I would say is, my intention is to be helpful and to work with, my intention is to be helpful here, and to not step on a relationship or to build a relationship with you. It could be just as simple in that living room example of, my intention here is to be helpful. I don't want to overstep any boundaries with you. I'm concerned about your lamp. And that's my intention.
So it's a diplomatic approach to leadership.
It's more than diplomatic. I think when you take a look at what's happening between President Obama and Putin, one of the things that's happening is the relationship's not working, or it doesn't appear to be at whatever level, and that could be very intentional. We don't know that looking at it from the outside in. Certainly, for any success to occur there, it would take the ability to actually sit down and have a real conversation about the level that they're communicating with one another, the gamesmanship, and moving past the gamesmanship and doing that with really true intention. And that's the case in any conflict along that line. So my intention is to be helpful. It's not to see your lamp being broken. My intention is to move our countries, our nations closer together, or to work more cooperatively. And for that to happen, you and I, we need to have a dialogue about our relationship and how we communicate and how we can make that happen. So to take it to that level, it's much like in a marriage to be able to say, my intention is to have a great marriage, and I want to talk about what that looks like. That
is a smart way. Yeah, you're a smart guy. I hope that people who are elected into office read your book.
Yes.
I mean, really, because
it's very kind of you.
Because the leadership skills that are not natural. I don't think it's natural. People say natural born leader. I don't know.
No.
I mean, you can learn this stuff. You can become better at it. I think learning some of the points that you make in the book are hopefully maybe a hard pill to swallow, but still an important pill to swallow.
Thank you. Yeah, it turns out that about 70% of our leadership behavior, of what we expect from leaders, 30% are actually, through studies, we've discovered that about 30% are natural to leaders, which are probably natural to most of us, and then the rest are learned, much like any other form of communication skill or leadership skill is much like any communication skill. We can learn through self-awareness to be more aware of the choices that we have and to be more effective. Very true.
Yeah, I think if we were going to pick a leader, which is also part of this is not just for the leaders, this is for us also as well, depending on what you are. See, I'm not the leader of the country, but like I am the alpha male of my house.
Yes, exactly.
But we have to, as voters, we have to say, well, which person is going to be the one who can influence others and getting to your point, deal with conflict the best?
Right.
I think that's what we have to look at.
Because in the end, that's the game. That's the game of leadership in the end. I mean, I look at it through this lens. If we didn't have conflict, we wouldn't have the need that for leaders that we do. It's really that simple.
What a wonderful conversation. Edgar, thank you for being on the air with us. I know we're very close to having to say goodbye. Do you have a website? Is it on Amazon?
Yes, the book's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all the other sellers. And yes, I have a website. It's just simply edgarpapke.com.
Papke. Go to that website, edgarpapke.com, and also go to Amazon and all the others. The Elephant in the Boardroom. That's what you need to remember. Edgar, thank you so much. That was wonderful. This is WOCA Ocala.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. The president says he will sign the budget bill, which passed the Senate overnight.
Bill avoids a government shutdown in December and raises the debt limit through March 2017, allowing the government to continue to borrow money to pay its bills. The legislation would also boost spending for military and domestic programs.
Fox Radio's John Decker. Critics say this bill gives the president a blank check for spending. An investigation underway after yesterday's emergency on a Dynamic Airways jet in Florida. Its engine catching fire just before it was supposed to leave for Venezuela.
They are on site. They will be looking at maintenance records, talking with the people that worked on the aircraft, talking with the flight crews. There might even be some interviews with passengers.
Kent George, director of the Broward County Aviation Department, and a school official in East St. Louis, says a tentative agreement's been reached with teachers who've been on strike for a month. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Meet Lawrence.